to make clear that the future's open, it's interesting to go to technology, because technology, evolution takes place in all of those three processes take place in technology. There's developmental, there's functional, developmental, evolutionary processes taking place in technology. And my claim is the following. The major difference is in technology, there's nothing corresponding to DNA. And this is what Stuart Kaufman has emphasized. You can have an idea in technology, a completely new idea, which is completely unexpected. And that totally opens up completely new areas, which was simply not predictable. And the context I like to put this into is to think about what's happening in the universe as stuff happens in the context of the expanding universe, the Big Bang, nucleosynthesis, the last scattering surface, creation of galaxies, stars, and so on. And the question is the following. So I've got an iPhone. There's my iPhone. Mm-hmm. The question is the following. Was it inevitable that this iPhone would come into existence given the data on the last scattering surface? Now, I claim absolutely not. There is no way whatever that you could predict the iPhone would exist if you knew every single thing about the last scattering surface. And the point is the following. If you take, for instance, Jim Peeble's recent book about cosmology, it goes into all of everything which leads to the structures on the last scattering surface. We understand all of those processes in great detail. They lead to modulated Gaussian fluctuations on the last scattering surface. There's nothing on the last scattering surface which corresponds to a prescription that the iPhone will come into existence today. Nothing. And let's ignore all of the problems that make it impossible. Well, one of the things is, supposing there was such a date on the last scattering surface, how would it get into my mind? Is one of the things you could ask. But and that is a basically impossible task, for which I could explain in depth. But the deeper question is the following. So let's forget all of the problems. We're going to insist that what happens today was uniquely determined by what happened in the last scattering surface, because, or if you like, at the beginning of inflation, I don't care, whenever you like to say. The question is the following. Who wrote the nature of the iPhone into the last scattering? How did that get in there? And you end up with having to assume that there was some kind of, I don't know what the phrase is, something not physical, something with intelligence wrote that data into the last scattering. That's what you have to assume. If you're going to assume that the existence of the iPhone in my hand today is uniquely determined. And that by itself proves that what happens today is not uniquely determined. And it's basically also as a part of the way of seeing that we have free will, because when Steve Jobs designed the iPhone, he thought of many different possibilities for the iPhone. He tried many different ones. The people who designed the transistors did, and all the rest of it. And this is the product of thoughtful, intelligent design. And that's what led to it. And it is not predicted by what was in the early universe. It's predicted by the fact that that the universe allows evolution to take place by setting the conditions for evolution. Evolution produces eventually human beings. Human beings have intelligence and free will. They design and build things like iPhones, computers, and all the rest. And that's the only story which makes sense to me as a way of understanding how the present-day world comes into existence.
I subscribe to The Economist. Their science and their AI coverage is among the best I've found anywhere. And I say that as someone who reads plenty of it. I'll give you some examples. They just ran an analysis on how attitudes towards science are changing in American politics and what this means for research and funding in scientific institutions moving forward. This sort of high-quality reporting is fantastic. They even covered how dark energy may be weakening over time. Now, if that holds up, it completely changes our understanding of the universe's fate. If you watch this channel, those are exactly the kinds of questions that we explore every week. I subscribe to The Economist because their science and their AI reporting regularly surprises me with how deep it goes. And they're also, of course, known for global affairs, both political and economic reporting. They are top tier, and interestingly and flatteringly, Toe is one of the only podcasts that The Economist partners with. So as a listener, you get an exclusive 35% off. That's not a deal that they have just anywhere. Head to economist.com/TOE to subscribe. That's economist.com/TOE for 35% off. Stuart Kaufman has his adjacent possibilities, and you have your possibilities space work. Those, to me, sound like you're both approaching the same issue from different sides.
Yeah. He had the adjacent possible, but his recent work, he emphasizes that in technology space, the adjacent possible is not continuous. You can make a sudden leap into some completely different place. So, for instance, the CAT scanner didn't exist. The CAT scanner didn't develop as an adjacent possible to previous things like CAT scanners. It was, and the same as to. It was a sudden revelation that you could have a CAT scanner, which was not an adjacent possible. So Stu's basic point that he's making nowadays is that the thing that is different, evolution takes place in technology, but it doesn't have to take place. It can jump. It can jump to completely different places. And the same is true of the laser. The laser was a conceptual jump into a completely new part of possibility space which simply hadn't been explored before.
Now, I imagine you have a response to this that occurs to the standard physicist, which is that, okay, we can say that the last scattering surface that we cannot predict, so let's not use the word predict because then you have to think of the predictor, and that person or thing will have incomplete information. Okay, but that's different than saying that the initial conditions of the Big Bang or what have you, plus the laws of physics, entailed the iPhone, entailed the CAT scanner. Do you disagree with that?
They certainly don't entail them. They allow them, they don't entail them. Now, if you insist on saying they entail them, so I'll write you down Maxwell's equations, Dirac equation. Deduce for me from those how a digital computer works. You can't do it. It's patent nonsense. And if you really insist on it, what you're assuming, it's a form of intelligent design. It's assuming that there was some kind of thing which wrote that in and made it happen. It's basically a nerd's form of intelligent design.
I'm showing Maxwell's equations on screen or on a piece of paper and then saying, okay, how does a computer work? How does this and that work? There's a difference between some sort of pragmatic entailment that we can deduce it versus some ontological entailment that it is produced or it is entailed.
Well, if you want to believe in fairy tales, fine, go ahead.
Does your anti-reductionism imply your dualism, or does your dualism lead you to anti-reductionism, or are those to be teased apart? Are those independent conclusions?
Look, reduction and emergence both take place. The problem is when people claim that only reduction takes place. They both take place. I'm not against reduction. I'm against reduction as a philosophy being the only thing that happens, and to me that's quite obviously wrong. And just a simple example, which I've written about, deduce from a physics Darwin's theory of evolution. Okay, deduce from physics. Should be able to do it if physics entails everything. The reason you can't is because physics does not have a concept of living or death. Darwin's theory of evolution depends on the concept of things being alive. Pick any physics textbook and you will not find in a physics textbook a definition of life. It's not part of physics. It's part of an emergent topic, namely biology. Life exists in emergent context of biology. It does not exist in a purely physical context. It doesn't exist in a technological context.
What if AI designs better spectacles than us?
Well, I am not an expert on AI. I do not claim to be that. A digital computer can do incredible things, but it does not have free will. It does what it's told to do. It does what the programmer tells it to do. Now, it does more than that. It can pick up new information from the outside world and react to that. It's a slight divergence, but what I need to emphasize in talking about all of this is the crucial fact that we are open systems. And the idea that you can predict, so let's go back to Laplace's demon, and I will know every single thing about every single molecule in this brain, your brain, at this moment. Okay? Now, as a matter of fact, that is not sufficient to determine what will happen in your brain 2 minutes from now. And the reason is because you're an open system. And this is a simple fact. Physicists tend to not think of context. They think in just generic terms, and they don't think of context. The fact that we are open systems means that new information, which we cannot predict, is coming in all the time. And the example I liked, there's a woman walking down the street, a car accident takes place. She's driving the car, an accident takes place. She didn't know the accident was going to take place. It takes place. Every single thing that happens in her brain from then on is different because the accident took place. And there's no way that you can predict that. Now, evolution has discovered that we are open systems, and so it's made our brains predictive processing systems. And this is where Carl Friston and all of that comes in. I believe that our brains are predictive processing. We are predictive processing systems precisely because we are open systems. It is for that reason that Laplace's demon cannot predict the future of our brains.
I also spoke to Carl Friston. Now, you keep mentioning people that I happen to speak to, and I want to know, is there anyone else that, since we seem to travel in the same circles, is there anyone else you think I should be speaking to regarding these topics?
The most important is Michael Levin.
Yes, I've spoken to him 4 or 5 times.
His stuff is truly amazing.
Yes.
Well, I think developmental biology in general is truly amazing. And people like Sean B. Carroll, the other Sean Carroll, have you talked with him?
No.
Okay, well, talk to the biologist Carroll, Sean B. Carroll. He's got this wonderful book. He talks about developmental systems and Hox genes and all of that kind of stuff. It's the bioelectricity of Michael Levin. To me, it's a completely unexpected. So there's the whole molecular stuff going on, and RNA, DNA, and all of that stuff. But he's proven conclusively there's another level going on of bioelectricity. And at first, this didn't even make sense to me, and I'm still trying to understand that. But he's proved conclusively that by his experiments that bioelectricity is at least as important as genetics in developmental processes, and much more than that. He's showed that there's apparent goal-directedness in some developmental process. They seem to know, and this I do not understand, they seem to know what the outcome ought to be. Now, that goes against all standard, but if he can do experiments which shows that, then I've got to change my outlook. And that this is a project I will be trying to undergo in depth soon, because it's a revolutionary kind of thing, and it's Nobel Prize winning level stuff. If developmental processes in some sense have an image of where they're going, then development isn't what we thought it was, and I think that's an incredible thing.